Warm welcome, dear viewers, to Health Television. Today we are talking about the holobiont concept in MS. Who today's guests are, you will find out after the intro. So definitely stay tuned. See you soon. Welcome back and warm welcome, dear Harald Burgard. You are a specialist in internal medicine, and today we also have someone joining us. A warm welcome, Dr. Med Leila Krütten. It's great that you could make it to join us here.
Yes, hello, good day. Leila Krütten is my name. Hello, I am 34 years old and I am happy that I can say a few things here in front of the camera today. Shall I start?
Yes, if you like, you can tell us how you came across Dr. Harald Burgard?
Yes, so to my story. Exactly 3 years ago, I came to Dr. Burgard's practice after I was diagnosed with MS. I am a doctor myself, worked in a clinic, and had developed numbness in my right hand. First in my fingers, then in the palm, then it spread over my arm to my abdomen, chest, and also my foot. And I got to the clinic relatively quickly, received a corticosteroid pulse therapy there, and by luck in misfortune, I ended up getting to Dr. Burgard's practice relatively soon and underwent over 1.5 to 2 years of a chelate therapy, or a generally holistic comprehensive therapy. And yes, I am still very glad that I had gone this way, and now I stand here.
Yes, great. Thank you very much already. You have already tried quite a bit. Of course, you also joined Mr. Burgard early enough. How does it look today, if I may ask?
Well, I am doing wonderfully. I am still working as a doctor. I took a longer break during this phase and went through the therapies and also many other therapies around it, such as physiotherapy, occupational therapy, acupuncture, craniosacral therapy, and so on. And I also did 6 apheresis during this time. I just had an apheresis yesterday. That was now my 8th. And I must say, I really feel good all around. And I also noticed that these blood washes have always brought me up a few small steps. And currently I have no symptoms, can pursue my profession, my hobbies. I am physically totally fit, just how one should feel. It hadn't been like that before. So when I think back, even to the time before the diagnosis was made, I was permanently tired. Just shortly before the diagnosis, I often had this so-called brain fog, which you can't really imagine, but this cloudy feeling in my head like a lack of concentration. I kept feeling like I was slipping into low blood sugar, but that was never the case. And overall, I was not at all capable of handling stress, was constantly tired. I always blamed it on the many shifts, 2 to 3 times a week with 24-hour shifts. I always thought it was because of that. But when I think back on it, I was actually somehow constantly exhausted and constantly not really able to handle stress. And that's actually different now. So when I get up in the morning, I generally do not get up early. Not a morning person, but I no longer go to the bathroom with my eyes closed and need a quarter of an hour before I can even open my eyes. And I just notice that I overall feel more vital, definitely.
That sounds like a very, very big success from many symptomatologies over many paths that you have also taken. That must be emphasized. You have really actively done something about it, towards this status that you have now achieved today, to be symptom-free, and of course also to stay that way. Yes, that is of course very inspiring, also for many who already have MS or maybe will have it in the future.
Watch Quest24 without commercial interruptions on Wikisana and use the world's unique AI search query. Ask your individual health questions and benefit from exclusive broadcasts.
So the question, dear Harald, have you made this observation often with MS patients, that such an improvement is possible?
Well, I have several patients who also suffer from MS. It's like with every chronic illness, you have to see what's behind it. With Dr. Krütten, it was also the case that there were many burdens in the background. We'll talk a bit more about that in detail later. And with her, it also added that the apheresis, the toxopheresis, not quite as easy to do because she has bad veins. And then we had to always go through the groin via the central venous catheter. We did that yesterday as well. And that is a procedure that allows for something to be done when the peripheral veins are poor. But how do you feel about that? How is it with such a CVL story?
Well, today I feel pretty good. In the first apheresis, I was really exhausted afterwards. And of course, once you are in the field, you know which steps come and are very tense, because you then essentially have to endure the process as a patient. And of course, I would be happier if I had better veins, then one could spare oneself all of this. But nonetheless, it is a good procedure after all, even in a short time. And you don't have to stay in the hospital or anything. It's basically all done after a few hours. And the results are, of course, insane. One is totally blown away oneself by what comes out of one. And what is also inside, we had that examined as well. Dr. Burgard can report on that himself. And also as a patient to see what comes out of me from my, I would say now, young early 30s. That is sometimes really frightening and fascinating at the same time. And of course, there was the thing with the femoral catheter. Yes, you just have to go through it, but it's not as dramatic as one imagines. Exactly.
So my own wife insisted on having an apheresis as well. And since she also has bad veins, we did it. She also, of course, has to rest that day, and a little bit the next day, so it doesn't bleed afterwards. But basically nothing major happens. We also don't make incisions or anything. That would need to be stitched. It's all safe. How do you generally feel after apheresis or during apheresis? Are there any side effects?
Well, during the first apheresis, I really noticed that I became very hoarse during it due to these mucosal processes that start in the body. Many patients report that as soon as the device was connected, they felt like a different person. And it was often the case with these dental processes. I'm just not the kind of person who has their teeth pulled and isn't completely changed. And for me, during apheresis, I first felt very tired and a bit like as if you had been lying in bed with the flu for 3 days and then tried to get out of bed. You can really tell that the body has to work hard. And you also have to be careful in the days afterward, or I personally have to be careful in the days afterward, because the immune system is also working and the lymphatic system and everything. That one does not somehow catch a cold or overexert oneself, because at first one feels a bit flat and then relatively energetic. One must not miss, so to speak, to still engage in a bit of self-protection and to continue taking it easy. But already after, that is in the first apheresis, I often had very swollen eyes the day after due to water retention. But that was, for example, not so massive at all this morning. So that also improved or changed from apheresis to apheresis. I also noticed while undergoing apheresis, even into the evening, that my stomach was very bloated. Probably also due to these processes through the filtration. And in the days that follow, one actually feels quite good again. And I personally always noticed after each apheresis, after a few weeks, that I had made a significant leap. Not really noticeably, but when I looked back, I then thought, oh yes, that's another little step up. And so I can only say that I am very happy that I have taken this path. Yes.
So what she says are individual reactions that differ from person to person.
Was sie sagt, sind individuelle Reaktionen, die von Mensch zu Mensch verschieden sind.
She just said that she didn't feel that immediate wow. There are patients who get up and say, "Oh, amazing, the fog is gone." That's 5%. The other 95% gradually notice improvements because the body has to work. These swellings, a little under the eyes, on hands, feet, for a few hours, that's normal. That's also because we are removing toxins that are bound to albumin. Albumin is a protein that holds water in the bloodstream. When the albumin level drops a bit because there are toxins attached and they are being pulled out, then a little fluid escapes, which the body then pulls back in. These are individual reactions. These are mild side effects. They are not serious.
Yes. Are there also cases where the side effects were a bit higher?
Well, we haven't seen that so far. There are very rarely patients, I've heard this 3 times, who had a little dizziness the next day, but I've never seen anything more happen. What can happen during the treatment is that blood pressure might drop because people react vegetatively when a needle is inserted, or because they react to something. Sometimes an infusion is also given, which can sometimes cause an allergic reaction. We notice that immediately because the patient is always connected to the ECG. We see the heartbeat, blood pressure, oxygen saturation, and breathing rate. We see all of that. We usually notice it before the patient does. And then we give a bit of fluid, or possibly an antihistamine, and then the problem is resolved. And then we continue with the treatment anyway. But to say that serious side effects arise, I have never seen.
Ms. Krütten, if we now have an audience who also has MS, I mean, you have gone through the whole procedure. You are an expert in your own illness, which I often see from people who have really overcome an illness. What are the most important things that you would perhaps pass on to the female and male audience members?
First of all, I wanted to briefly mention I learned directly after the diagnosis, before I started therapy with Dr. Burgard, I created a list, and you hear, "Oh, I know someone who knows someone, give him a call. He has that too," and get informed. And I was, of course, also offered a conventional medicine immunosuppressive therapy, which is covered by health insurance, also with high costs. But still, I wanted to inform myself a bit, and I wrote to, I think, almost 20 people, or called them, who were strangers to me, but with whom I talked, about how the therapy is, what therapy they received, and how they are doing with it. And I was massively depressed and frustrated because none of them were satisfied or were symptom-free. And I basically just jumped into this therapy right after the diagnosis and didn't really think much about it. But in retrospect, it was the best thing that could happen to me, for thus this path, of course it wasn't easy either, especially for me now as a doctor. Which path should I take, and how do I justify it? And indeed, entirely new doors have opened up, especially in holistic medicine. One doesn't really know everything about what exists as a conventional doctor. And that's why I am always fascinated, and it is totally exciting what is possible when one wants it. And to the question, I would still choose this path again. And I have read many books, informed myself here, informed myself there, and done many therapies. I believe the important thing is also this approach from the other side. Where is the cause? And I mean, Dr. Burgard will certainly report on this later too. It is often not just one thing that makes the personal cup, so to speak, overflow, but it is indeed a mix of so many small things, pathogens and heavy metal exposure. And ultimately, one has to somehow attack everything a bit and reduce the personal aspect so that one can live well with it. And I would still continue to inspire people to try this path. But of course, you can't generalize it all. Not everyone is the same, and for me it was the best way. But everyone has to decide for themselves. And of course there are some who simply take immunosuppressants and are still doing well and are happy with that. And then that is completely fine.
Yes, that was really super valuable what you have said here again, especially looking at the individuals. What is really the true path for one? For someone, that can be the path you have taken. For others, of course, it's a different path. Yes, thank you very much for really sharing personal things so that others can benefit from it. Instead of going up the whole staircase, as you have done, you can now use the elevator directly. I am really thankful that you were here as well. I think Harald, Burgard, and I will now go into the data to see what has been discovered.
Yes, above all, we will also talk soon about general causes of MS, so that the people who might be affected can understand why it can even arise. We'll briefly discuss that.
Yes, great.
Yes, thank you very much. All the best. Continued success.
Yes, thank you very much, and all the best to you as well.
I wish that for you too. Thank you very much, Mrs. Krütten.
See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Yes, dear Harald, now we have heard many personal things as well. What your journey was, what your experience was. Yes, would you maybe like to tell us a bit more about MS in general?
Yes. So I had discussed with the patient and colleague that I might be allowed to mention a few things. So she has already described the symptoms that often occur, sensory disturbances. Fortunately, she has not experienced any paralysis, and so on, which is what happens later if you don't intervene. But the question is always, why does such a person become ill and another person does not? And we know from studies, we know from publications, we also know from experience what we find in people. And the very young patient, who had a well-maintained dentures, still had 2 areas of inflammation in the region of the former wisdom teeth that had to be treated. They released toxins into the body, which also sent bacteria into the intestines. Yes, and we can measure all of that. And when you see that, caution, that could be a reason. Why, I will explain shortly. Then the gut flora was disturbed. She also had a nickel allergy. Then you think, well, what does that do with it? Everyone knows that there is hardly any jewelry or no jewelry at all that contains nickel. But in many foods, there is nickel. And if you eat nickel and you have a nickel allergy, it causes irritation in the entire gastrointestinal mucosal system. And that can then lead to a chronic inflammation. That was the case for her as well. Then she also had a problem with gallstones. She showed various inflammations at different levels in the blood and also various pathogens, including cytomegaloviruses and toxoplasmosis. And toxoplasmosis is also known for being able to initiate, reinforce, or cause MS. So it is important to find such things and also to treat them.
Yes, absolutely.
Then there were various deficiencies, including energy deficiency. And of course, she also had relatively many toxic metals, such as aluminum and mercury. Aluminum and mercury are both neurotoxins, which are associated with the development of neurological diseases, to which multiple sclerosis belongs. Then arsenic, cadmium, and so on. I've already mentioned bad veins. And all these inflammatory markers, which were high, we had the 7th treatment yesterday and had taken blood before that. In February, we saw that all these inflammatory markers were gone. Whether the sedimentation rate was elevated, the white blood cells, the eosinophils, or the gamma globulins, these are all signs of chronic inflammation, of immune deficiencies. The CD57 antibodies, which are low during pathogen load, have normalized. That means the pathogens have decreased, and she has no symptoms anymore. But all of this can only be determined if it is diagnosed beforehand and the causes are looked into. Then she had a whole range of environmental toxins. And these are now general causes that do not concern you, but we know what leads to MS according to studies. This is not a disease that falls from the sky.
Yes, exactly.
And environmental toxins like pesticides, cigarette smoke, air pollution play a major role. Pathogen exposure such as Epstein-Barr viruses or toxoplasmosis. It is known that they creep in there. Dental focal points, as we just discussed. A poor diet, a bad diet, or an allergenic diet, such as nickel in nuts, grains, in various other foods. Then gut flora disturbance, dysbiosis. We always talk about the holobiome that we look at. That means we look at the body's own cells, but also at the pathogens that live in and on us. Because if they are not taken into account, then we also become ill. And then lack of exercise, overweight, sleep disturbances, vitamin D deficiency. These are classic known consequences or causes that lead to MS. And then it happens that in people who may have the genetics for it, the switches turn on. This is called epigenetic change. Then free radicals are created by pathogens through poisons that then cause damage in the vessels or in the nerves. Fibrinogen activity rises, leading to poorer blood circulation. And inflammatory substances simply develop. And that is actually the core problem, that permanently inflammatory substances arise, which then cause chronic inflammation. It doesn't matter whether they are called TNF-alpha, interleukin-6, or blood sedimentation, or whatever. And the problem is that when there are inflammations in the body, they always activate the inflammatory cells in the brain. And then an inflammation can develop in the brain. And these things are responsible for the fact that the disease either develops, progresses, or of course, flare-ups occur, setbacks occur. That's why it's so important from my perspective to find the causes, to reduce them as much as possible so that you protect these people from further damage. And these chronic inflammations in the brain trigger not only MS, but also Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, brain fog, which Dr. Krütten just mentioned, cognitive impairments, concentration problems, memory issues. Some people become depressed and so on. That's why it's important that we find these chronic inflammations and eliminate them. And you can do that very well with toxopheresis, because we can extract almost every environmental toxin with it. And then the body can get back into regulation and can heal itself. The doctor doesn't do that. Your body does. And she also said nicely, it gets better abruptly after a while.
Yes.
And that is the self-healing that occurs.
So the stairs upward towards health.
Exactly.
Yes, it was really exciting to have a patient here now to really present the experiences, although not physically, but that she also got to speak to truly present the experiences. In conclusion, I have one more question. She had mentioned that she has done it 7-8 times. Why is it necessary to do so many treatments? Isn't one enough, and then it's good?
Yes, it is sometimes postulated that one should do a major blood cleansing and then everything comes out at once. That's a fairy tale, and anyone who claims that cannot prove it, simply because the body reacts according to mechanisms we have known for a long time. Toxins are not all in the blood. That would be simple. Then I do a blood cleansing and pull everything out. The toxins are in the blood, in the connective tissue, in the lymphatic system, in the organs, in the brain, in the bones, wherever. According to osmotic laws, I draw the toxins out of the blood, and then a concentration difference arises compared to what is in the brain and in the kidney area. Then it only takes some time until these substances catch up and realign. Then I can take more out of the blood in the second, third, fourth step. That can never be achieved in one treatment. That cannot be achieved either with chelate therapy in one treatment. Anyone who knows and works in my field with chronically ill environmental patients knows this can never happen in one treatment. Some patients feel wonderfully better after 2 treatments, especially if they have long COVID, for example. And others need 7, 8, 10 treatments. It varies from person to person. And sometimes you only see after the 4th or 5th time that real dirt is coming out. And that can never be achieved in one treatment. No matter how long I would do that. That's why several treatments.
All clear. And if you want to get more information or want to take advantage of that, where can you actually contact?
You can contact Burgard or call. We are in Wattgassen. You can find us in the telephone directory or on the internet. and possibly also through search engines.
Perfect. I thank you very much, dear Harald.
You're welcome.
I wish you, of course, continued success in the treatment of such diseases. And to you, dear viewers, I naturally wish you continued excellent health and look forward to when you are with us again next time. Goodbye on the internet.
Thank you for watching from Swiss Health Television, QS24. Please don't forget to subscribe to the channel here above, because here you can watch all programs ad-free. But also subscribe to our YouTube channel. That also helps us a lot. Here a selection for you, compiled of broadcasts that you are sure might also interest you. All the best, until another time.